while that is the case, at the sector level, there still are a number of gaps filled in what we're calling the commons. And just to define what we mean by the commons here, the commons are public goods which would accelerate the impact and mainstreaming of mHealth. And these are unlikely to be undertaken by any individual player and do not disproportionately benefit any one player. So they're fundamentally commons areas or public goods. And what you see on the right-hand side are examples of what lies in the commons. Things like shared evidence, tools for collaboration, platforms for interoperability that require cross-sectoral cooperation and working together to really build these areas that will enable the sector at the aggregate. So with that in mind, just wanted to share a couple points from what we heard from stakeholders earlier this year in our strategic review of the mHealth Alliance. If everyone could go on mute, we're hearing a bit of background noise again. Thanks. A couple of themes emerged from our interviews. The first is you'll see on the top line here, there remains a strong need for the mHealth Alliance, and no other organization is right now positioned to play this type of role, which would fundamentally be building the commons. With that in mind, the roles laid out at Bellagio remain relevant, so the initial thinking 3 years ago and the initial operating plan still ring true in many ways. But within that, fundamentally, there's a need to clarify the mission and position. And that's the last point here, and you'll see that this was a big point of feedback in that there was lack of clarity on positioning and a need to really define exactly what the Alliance will do and where it will play. I'm sorry, if everyone could just make sure they're on mute. We're a little bit of noise. A second piece here moves beyond what the Alliance needs to do and how it can play in terms of building the commons, and starts to get at what we heard about how the Alliance operates. And here there were three main themes about how it's operated historically and what people would like to see going forward. The first is around focus. Focus. There's a need for a well-defined activities, ensuring that the Alliance won't try to be everything to everyone. Similarly, there's a need to start delivering value soon and focusing on what can be delivered in the next 6 to 9 months. And finally, be collaborative. So real reflection on the fact that the Alliance, if it is in fact going to build the commons, needs to start working very differently with its partners and members and the overall mHealth field and community. So with that fact base and with the input from stakeholders that we just walked through, I want to share the draft strategy. And I'll take a minute to step through the components here. It bears a bit of explanation. But again, this is where we've landed after the analysis and after the stakeholder input and work with the mHealth Alliance team to date, and our framing of what we see as the overall strategic direction thus far. And this is really where we want your input today, and where you help us to refine this and make sure that it is in line with what's needed in the sector and where the mHealth Alliance can play a valuable role. So just to start at the top line mission. The mission of the mHealth Alliance is to improve health through the use of mobile technologies. Moving from there to the goal, and this is really thinking about the end state the mHealth Alliance wants to achieve. mHealth is mainstreamed into global health systems through the building of the commons. So where do we want to get to and how are we going to do it? Then from there, the strategic priorities that will help guide the organization These probably look very familiar by now. As you'll see, these relate to the 5 sector gaps: evidence, integration and interoperability, sustainable financing, capacity, and policies. And then finally, what will the Alliance do? And here's where fundamentally the Alliance will be working to catalyze and work with its partners and members to build the Commons. And there are 4 main activities that we've laid out that will help it move in this direction. The first is setting the agenda. So what actually needs to be done to build the Commons, and what are the priority areas? The second, building the mHealth knowledge base. So cataloging, collecting, disseminating, broadcasting all of the information that already exists, that's being collected and synthesized in some sources, and putting it together in a way that helps to really inform the agenda and help build the Commons. The third, connecting, convening, and facilitating the community. The mHealth Alliance cannot build the Commons on its own. It needs to work with members of the community, partner organizations, and really facilitate decision-making and activities and the overall agenda to build the Commons. And then finally, mHealth Alliance will provide catalytic funding to accelerate the building of the Commons. And here there's a role for small, fast grants that can help bring the community together, commission small pieces of research, and really speed up the overall pace by which the work in the Commons is occurring. So with that, I just spoke a little bit about some of these roles, but this is a more detailed view of what the mHealth Alliance will do. And these 4 buckets and these 4 roles are critical in terms of really catalyzing the community, working with members and partners, and setting the agenda, bringing in the right information, facilitating, convening, connecting, and where relevant, providing catalytic funding to move across common areas. Just to make this concrete, we've laid out a couple of examples of what this might look like. These are 2 illustrative areas looking at evidence and interoperability that could be taken. Sorry, if everyone's joining. So these are the 2 of the process that can be taken across strategic priorities. And just to walk through one of these briefly, I'll take you through evidence and what this would actually mean and what the content would look like. And one frame to keep in mind here, again, coming back to the notion that the mHealth Alliance is really catalyzing and working with others. There are 2 units of denomination that would be important across the strategic priorities and across how it works. One is a working group structure, whereby the mHealth Alliance could bring together relevant, interested stakeholders and experts who want to work more intensively on certain common areas. And the second is unity of practice. It would be a much broader unit, a way of sharing the information and sharing what's happening in a focused working group with the broader community and allowing for engagement, allowing for knowledge sharing, and greater connectivity across the community. So within evidence, the first area, setting the agenda, the Alliance would work with members and partners to identify which evidence gaps in our priorities and would work to prioritize the top research questions for the community to answer in the next 12 to 24 months. The Alliance would work to build the knowledge base, collecting the evaluations, information, research underway, and really curating this is a word we've been using, but putting it together in a way that's easily understood and digestible, as well as publicizing evaluation tools and metrics that are being developed by other peer organizations like GSMA, WHO, Johns Hopkins, and others. The third, connecting, convening, and facilitating. So again here, the Alliance would create a community of practice on Hub, virtual collaboration, and with support of targeted events like webinars, like we're doing today, or side meetings, summits, and would identify relevant stakeholders and convene a more intensive working group, which it would help to facilitate and hold accountable in building the commons together. Finally, catalytic funding. So 2 ideas would be in evidence. The first is finding creative ways to fund research, such as incentive pools for implementers to contribute, or ways of adding questions where possible to large-scale evaluations underway. In addition to that, providing catalytic funding, which could bring members together, commission small research efforts that would help to answer the key questions that had been prioritized, and providing fast, small grants that could really help to move towards building the commons in a much faster way. Finally, and important, just want to emphasize that in addition to refining the strategy and articulating what the Alliance will focus on, I want to emphasize that the Alliance will also be changing the way in which it works. The mHealth Alliance can only be as strong as what its members and partners are working on together. And with that in mind, we've been benchmarking a number of best-in-class organizations, looking at how they work with partners and members to work on these types of commons issues and areas. So with that, just a brief overview of the roadmap from here. So at the upcoming mHealth Alliance Summit, Patty will be unveiling the final strategy reflecting the input that you're providing today. Be finalizing the operating and really digging into what this means from an operational perspective for the Alliance going forward. So with that, answering some of the questions today via Q&A, and then also would love additional feedback that you might want to submit via the discussion board on Hub that will have a copy of this presentation. And if you have colleagues join today but might want to provide input, would be great if you could share this link with them.